Hello everyone, welcome back to Platinum Gaming. I hope you had a great Valentine's Day, and thank you for continuing to watch. Today I'm going over all of the games that kept me entertained in February. I'll give you a brief description, share my thoughts, and show some gameplay. If that sounds interesting, please consider liking the video and subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. Alright, let's get started. My main game this month was Tunic. For those unfamiliar, Tunic is an isometric action-adventure game centered around exploration, environmental puzzles, and Souls-like combat. The core gameplay loop revolves around exploring interconnected areas, fighting enemies, collecting upgrades, and piecing together the in-game manual. This manual is a beautifully designed but intentionally cryptic guidebook whose pages you discover throughout the world. Tunic is a game I've had my eye on ever since it launched as an Xbox-timed exclusive. My love for isometric games, the game's art style, the comparisons to classic Zelda, and the sense of exploration intrigued me the most about it. However, I was only able to get it until it launched on PlayStation, and I was hyped, knowing it was exactly my kind of game. I got it 2 years ago, and I actually started it last summer. I played it for about 3 hours, and it was a great experience. However, I was just not feeling it at the time and moved on to something else. Now, I put a pause on playing this game because Tunic is a game built around exploration, patience, and slowly familiarizing yourself with its world. At the time, my schedule was tight, and I gravitated toward more digestible pick-up-and-play experiences, and Tunic demanded attention and memory. It wanted me to sit with it, and I wasn't ready to give it that. Now, I say this in the most positive way. It is a good thing that this game is like this, and it's actually what makes it special. But it was really important for me to not ruin this experience by resorting to guides out of desperation to make the most of my limited gaming time. Fast forward to February of this year. I was craving an isometric game, and I wanted something I knew was quality. Now there are plenty of isometric games in my backlog, but Tunic was the one that kept calling me back. Anyways, I picked it up again and ended up starting a fresh save with a different mindset and committed to sticking with it. The funny thing about this game, and what I would warn other players about, is that it's a game that can be tough to crack. At least for me. The opening hours are really fun, but you get to a point where the lack of direction can be a bit off-putting as we are used to games being more direct about what to do. The combat is not the most difficult I have encountered, but it's definitely punishing to encounter enemies without upgrading your character and understanding the combat system. So much so that I almost dropped it a second time. However, I pushed through hoping that it would be worth it, and it really was. This game paid off big for me, and once I got better at it, it was one I could not put down. And visually, this game is stunning. There were multiple moments where I stopped and wondered how the developers created such beautiful spaces without relying on hyper-realistic graphics. The art direction was my favorite thing about this game. The soft lighting, the environments, and the sense of scale make this game charming and atmospheric in a way that really captures that diorama feeling I love so much. Combat is another strength. It's weighty and supported by meaningful upgrades. As you grow stronger, you feel enemies getting easier to defeat and the world easier to traverse and explore. And although exploration can be initially overwhelming, it becomes a real strength of this game. Memorizing shortcuts, uncovering hidden paths, discovering different parts of the world was a nice recall to how games used to feel. They used to feel harder, discovery felt earned, and the world became something you would thoroughly memorize. To me, the combat feels good, but it's not quite dialed in. It's tough, but sometimes it doesn't feel entirely fair, and feels just slightly off, in a way that's hard to describe. And while the cryptic nature of exploration is part of its identity, I do think it leans too far into vagueness. I love that the manual has to be assembled and deciphered, but at times it feels almost too garbled, pushing from intriguing into frustration. However, that is all too small compared to the greatness of everything else this game does right. It's funny to think this is a game I almost dropped twice, but I forced myself to slow down and to learn its world instead of trying to conquer it quickly, and this was a very rewarding choice. Also, the story takes a really cool turn, but more than anything, Tunic is a game that encouraged me to stop chasing the next trophy, the next dopamine hit, and to remember how games used to feel. Another game I enjoyed a lot this month was Returnal. Aside from being one of my favorite games of all time, Returnal is a third-person roguelike shooter developed by Housemarque. It is centered around fast-paced combat, risk-reward decision-making, and traversing amazing-looking biomes in the search for answers. Here, you play as Celine, stranded on the alien planet Atropos, caught in a time loop where death resets the world but not your knowledge, so a pretty standard roguelike. I first experienced Returnal in 2022, and it quickly cemented itself in my mind as one of my top PlayStation experiences. I beat it, earned the platinum, went back for the Tower of Sisyphus content, and even after all that, I had been itching to play it again. Last month gave me the perfect excuse. My friend has been meaning to try it for some time, and with the co-op update added a while back, I decided to revisit it with him. I was so excited for him to experience it for the first time and for me to step back into one of my favorite worlds in gaming. And I cannot emphasize enough how great this game is. The atmosphere of each biome is incredible, and probably what I enjoy most. From the haunting, overgrown ruins to the dusty desolation of later areas, every world feels distinct and hostile in its own way. The biomechanical art style is something they executed impeccably and elicits a similar feeling I get from the Alien franchise. That, combined with the excellent sound design and music, creates something that feels very alien and unsettling. However, even though the visuals and sound design alone make it an incredible experience, the combat is where this game truly shines. I love the satisfaction of exploding enemies with melee attacks and experimenting with the wide variety of guns and their unique traits. The movement is fluid and demands aggression in a way that reminds me of a third-person Doom Eternal. Dashing through a frenzy of bullets, activating abilities at the right moment, and building synergy with artifacts creates some of the most satisfying gameplay I've ever experienced. What makes each run so fun is how powerful you can become if things align and you understand how to build your setup properly. The way artifacts, parasites, weapon traits, and consumables stack together feels perfectly designed. That combination of mastering movement while carefully building a strong run is what makes this game perfect for me from a gameplay standpoint. In my opinion, this game is as close to perfect as it gets. If I had to ask for anything more, it would be a slightly less cryptic narrative that offers a bit more story and lore. In fact, the only real weakness I see is in the co-op implementation. The person joining has to restart from scratch, and you can only invite once per biome. It would have been nice if the system remembered your session so that playing together didn't require a mandatory hour-long push just to reach a checkpoint. Losing that progress also makes shorter sessions harder to plan, and future sessions feel unfair. That said, I'm very thankful this functionality was added for free, especially alongside the Tower of Sisyphus content. Despite our co-op limitations, my friend and I managed to beat the second biome boss together after a healthy amount of tries. The best part was seeing my friend experiencing the intensity and the atmosphere, as well as witnessing his grossed out reactions to the enemies. It was such a great time, and I look forward to us beating the game in March. To me, Returnal represents Housemarque's impressive evolution as a studio, and makes me wish they got more love. I've played many of their earlier titles, and you can clearly see the progression. They've always been great at creating fun gameplay loops and arcade-style bullet storms, but here they elevated those strengths into a full-fledged PlayStation exclusive, and they absolutely delivered. And with Saros on the horizon, I can't wait to see where they go next. Another game I sampled towards the end of the month was Darwin's Paradox. I believe I saw the first trailer at last year's State of Play event and was immediately interested. What grabbed me immediately was the art style and the fact that you play as an octopus. I love these animals, and I instantly felt like controlling one would lead to really creative and fun game mechanics. The demo was only about 40 minutes long, but in that short time, my assumptions were confirmed. Sticking to walls, using ink, camouflaging, stretching to launch yourself, and swimming through environments felt very fun. In addition, I think the octopus itself is really funny looking, and I love how he squeaks when he gets hit. That said, the demo was not as enticing as it could have been. However, I think that's mostly because it was just a small taste. It felt like there wasn't enough time to fully explore or combine all the mechanics in meaningful ways. However, it left me very intrigued as to the story it will have, since it seems to involve aliens and an evil corporation. My wife actually loved it as well, and we both agreed that it was a cool and refreshing project. The graphics look great, and I'm glad it's not taking 10 years and $200 million to bring to life. Also, I really appreciate when the industry makes room for smaller, single-player focused games like this, alongside the massive flagship titles. I'll definitely pick this up once it launches and proves it's a quality release, given my backlog, also probably on the first sale. But it's absolutely on my radar, and I'm excited to see how the full game expands on such a promising demo. Another smaller game I crossed off the backlog this month was Donut County. This one caught my eye after watching one of those easy platinum trophy videos, but that wasn't the main reason I picked it up. What really drew me in was how much it reminded me of those simple mobile games I used to play years ago. I wanted a light palate cleanser that was along those lines, and if I happened to get a platinum out of it, even better. Overall, I had a good time with it. The raccoon character was funny, and the humor throughout the game has a charming tone. In addition, the core gameplay mechanic, which consists of controlling a growing hole that swallows everything in its path, is satisfying and easy to play. That said, I was a bit let down, and before I explain why, I want to say that I appreciate what the developers created. I think my expectations were the bigger issue, but the biggest thing for me was momentum. I used to play a phone game with a similar concept, and I wanted this game to scratch that itch. However, those sessions on my phone felt longer, as well as more continuous and fun. Here, even though the game had more polish, actual missions, and a small narrative, each chapter felt so short that I sometimes felt like I was spending more time reading dialogue than actually playing. The gameplay would start to feel fun, and then it would end. The final section, though, felt closer to what I was hoping for, and was pretty fun. Overall, I think it's a nice game, and I'm glad I finally tried it. However, I probably won't go for the platinum since I mainly reserve that for games I truly love, but I would definitely recommend it for someone that has a younger gamer in their life. Now, I've probably ranted enough about Helldivers 2 on this channel, so I'll keep it brief. For February, my Helldivers obsession continued, but it felt more satisfied as I began to move on to other games. This month was mostly about having a great time fighting the automatons. The Machinery of Oppression update came with the Siege Breakers Warbond, and I have to say, it was an excellent addition. Almost every item felt like a game changer, and was really fun to use. Even though the automatons aren't my favorite faction to fight, this Warbond introduced the Trident and the Shield Grenade, which made taking on the bots better than ever. The addition of the cyborgs and the invasion of Cyberstan were really cool, and I had a great time tackling it with friends. While the campaign itself wasn't as epic as I thought it would be, especially considering we were literally invading Cyberstan, and it did sort of fizzle out, it still delivered a lot of cool moments. Most importantly, getting such a strong Warbond made the whole event feel worthwhile. The Trident and the buffed grenade launcher even made my bug runs better. My loadout feels rock solid now, and it's been great to use. Combined with the fun moments I shared with friends, I had a great time with Helldivers this month. That said, after 270 hours, I'm ready to dial it back to maybe once a week, or just weekend sessions with friends. Not because it isn't a great time, but because I've put in a lot of hours and want to explore the exciting games still sitting in my backlog. I'd rather step away while it's still fun than let it become something I play out of comfort instead of enjoyment. Taking a break will also make it feel fresh when I decide to dive back in. This is something I've done before with my favorite games, with Returnal being a prime example. So that's my gaming recap for February. I crossed 2 games off the backlog, had a great time revisiting Returnal and playing Helldivers with friends, and most importantly, I played what I felt like and had fun. What did you play this month? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.